So first, can you just talk to me a little bit more about how Danny and his family are doing?
Well, we're now 2 years since this terrible tragedy involving Danny, and he's being taken care of at home by his parents, and he's receiving the very best of care from them. They're the most remarkable family I've ever met in my entire 44 years of practicing law. I've never seen such dedicated family members. They take care of him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at their home, even though they have the ability to put him in some sort of a facility where he would get professional around the clock care. They don't want to do that. And because of their very best efforts, Danny's doing as well as he can, but his condition is not substantially changed. He cannot see, he cannot speak, he cannot walk, he cannot care for himself, but he knows that his family is there, and in his own ways, he can react to things that they say, but it's a horrible tragedy.
Absolutely. And like you were saying, there hasn't really been a significant progression with how his condition is doing so far.
There's not been a significant improvement in his condition, but the family reports, since they're with him 24 hours a day, that they do see some improvements, but all of the very serious things that are wrong with him are still there. He is blind, he cannot speak, cannot talk, cannot walk, and he cannot care for himself.
Absolutely. And at this point, I know we had discussed a little bit earlier, six of the members of fraternity have pleaded guilty at this point of those 11 hazing suspects. Can you just talk a little bit more about the progression of the case with these members in guilty and what the progression will be looking like at this point, to your knowledge, in the coming months?
Well, as of now, the middle of October, we have 6 or 7 fraternity members who have pled guilty to criminal charges that the state filed against them. They have, as a result, been sentenced. Some of them went to jail, although frankly, it hasn't been enough jail time, if, in my opinion. They've only been in jail for 2 days, that's it, under what they call shock therapy. But I don't care what shock therapy consists of. 2 days is not enough time, because Danny Santulli was sentenced to maybe 50 years of shock therapy if he lives out his normal life expectancy. But we have no control or input into the criminal justice system. That process plays out separately from the civil case that I represented him on. And there are about 4 or 5 more defendants to go.
Absolutely. Thank you for that update there. Um, and I know something else that you had spoken about previously was the importance of kind of implementing change, not just at the University of Missouri, but also just nationwide in terms of hazing cases. Can you just talk a little bit more? Because I know the Santulli case has been cited in hazing videos, introductory videos for the University of Missouri. Can you talk about what it means to be able to help those systems change for the better?
Well, I've been working on trying to implement change across the Greek system for 30 years at different universities. Just a few weeks ago, I was invited to Ohio University in Athens, Ohio, where I spoke to a room full of nearly 1,000 fraternity and sorority members about the Santulli case and other aspects of hazing. And it was a pretty dramatic presentation where not a person in the audience moved a muscle as I played videos of hazing victims and the impact that it has on hazing families. So change is in the wind. In the state of Minnesota, where Danny is from, there is a bill that we expect will move its way through the process that may make some material changes to the hazing law. On a national level, a number of families, parents of fraternity members who have died in the last 10 years gathered together in Washington, D.C., and met with Senator Klobuchar from Minnesota, who is spearheading a national anti-hazing bill that, if signed into law, would make, for the first time, fraternity hazing a federal crime, and everyone is optimistic that that legislation will get passed. However, it would be naive to think that just because a new law may be on the books, whether it's a state law or a federal law, that it will have any instantaneous or material change on bad behavior in fraternities around the United States. There are already anti-hazing laws on the books in over 40 states, and we still have hazing cases all the time, all around the country. We have laws that say murder is a crime, but there are murders that take place every day of the year all around the United States. So new laws are not necessarily a panacea or the answer to trying to stop this. We have to change behavior at the local level, at the individual universities, at the individual fraternities. And we can do that without any more new laws, but everything can help.
Absolutely. And I also want to ask, based on your last point, you're saying, change starts at the local level. And specifically, I know it's been a lot of support for the Santulli family as this case has progressed and over the last 2 years. Can you talk a little bit more about what that looks like, specifically as you're seeing the Santulli case unfold, what change that could potentially bring on from the local level based on the Santulli case into the universities?
Unfortunately, the Santulli case does not stand alone. It's just one of a whole bunch of very bad, nasty hazing cases that have resulted in either death or serious injury in the last 20 years. Just since the year 2000, over 65 fraternity pledges have died in fraternity hazing incidents. And although Danny did not die, he's got horrific injuries. And when you look at the never-ending stream of these bad hazing outcomes, we see that it goes on, and that's despite the fact that every major university in the country has an anti-hazing policy. Every major fraternity and sorority in the country has an anti-hazing policy. So these policies are out there, they are on the books, and yet these bad outcomes continue. But I do think that when you see something as horrific as Danny's case, there's a groundswell from the local level, the local community, the students at these universities who stand up and say, we have had enough. We don't want this anymore. The parents are up in arms about it. They don't want to send their sons and daughters off to universities where this is happening. And we're starting to see some real support at the individual level for the universities to stop these things, and for these young men, primarily it's the men, to rein in their behavior and not do what what they've been doing for such a long time. So maybe we'll see a change, but if so, it will be very slow and gradual.
Absolutely. And I just have one more question for you. That is specifically, I know at the beginning of this interview, you had mentioned that the Santulli family is providing Danny with round-the-clock care, and that they were remarkable in that way, that they were willing and able to do that. Can you talk just a little bit more about your experience with what you want people to know, because you've worked so closely with families that have experienced these horrific tragedies, what you want people to know when sending their kids off to these universities, and what you would say to those who are participating in acts of hazing?
Everyone needs to understand that there's not just one victim in a hazing incident. It's not just the pledge who has been hazed, who either dies or is seriously injured. When there is an act of hazing that results in serious injury or death, it has an immediate impact on the family of the victim, because they all get involved in it and they're all devastated by it. It has an immediate impact on those that do the hazing, because they are now at risk of being kicked out of school and criminally prosecuted. It has an immediate impact on their families, because their families now are going out and having to hire criminal defense lawyers, and they're often on the receiving end of a civil lawsuit as a result of what their sons have done. It has an immediate impact on the universities because it casts a bad light on the universities. It casts a bad light on the fraternities. So it is widespread. The negative impact of hazing is widespread, and these are real world consequences. I can tell you that 30 years ago, I represented the family of a young man, Chad Meredith, at the University of Miami here in Florida, who was a brand new freshman pledged to a fraternity, and he died as a result of a night of hazing. And we had a jury trial in that case. And the jury returned a verdict against the fraternity president and vice president. And it resulted in the largest verdict in a fraternity case in the country. 25 years later, I got a phone call on my cell phone by an employer in the state of Michigan that was thinking about hiring the fraternity president. But he Googled the guy and saw that 25 years ago I sued him and that he was involved in a hazing incident. And he called, this prospective employer called me to ask me for my opinion of this person and whether or not I thought he should be hired. And I tell you the story because as a result of the internet and Google, once there are media stories about hazing involving the victim and those who do the hazing, they are out there forever. And it will make those who do the hazing have a much harder time getting a job, and you can never shake it. It will always follow you for the rest of your life. And you need to think about that if you're going off to college and joining a fraternity and thinking about perpetuating a tradition of hazing, because you're going to wish later on in life that you were never involved in it because it will negatively impact your life.